In the dying Hive City of Varaxis, silence was the rarest luxury. The air always trembled, with the hum of machines, the sobs of the broken, the whispers of devotion to gods none dared name aloud. But tonight, the silence was absolute. It came not as peace, but as a suffocating blanket, heavy and strange, as if the city itself held its breath. In that silence, the first whisper was born. It drifted through the corridors of rust and filth, slipping into homes and dreams, sliding across skin like the trace of a lover's finger. The whisper carried no words, only a sensation, soft, inviting, warm. Yet beneath that warmth lurked hunger, sharp and infinite. Among the millions who felt it, one heard it clearest, a woman named Lyra. She was a civilian, a seamstress in the lower hab blocks, whose hands stitched uniforms for soldiers long dead. The whisper found her while she worked beneath a flickering lumen light. Her needle froze in her fingers as something unseen caressed the back of her neck. It did not speak, but she understood. "You have suffered enough." The voice was not sound but feeling, a vibration in her bones, a sweetness in her nerves. For the first time in her bleak, gray life, she smiled. Across the hive, others felt it too. A miner's hand bled as he touched the wall and found it pulsing like flesh. A child laughed as its reflection grinned wider than its face. A priest fell to his knees, trembling, whispering, "Forgive me, Emperor, it feels so good." The air began to thicken. Every breath tasted faintly of copper and perfume. Every shadow shimmered like wet silk. The hive's lights dimmed, yet the darkness gleamed, colors unseen by mortal eyes danced in it. Lyra stepped into the street. People stood still, staring upward. The sky, once black with ash, rippled with color, a living aurora of violet and crimson. The stars bled. The clouds turned inside out. And from the heart of that impossible sky, the whisper became music, a song of agony so beautiful it could break the soul. Some wept. Some laughed. Some tore open their skin just to feel the rhythm better. Lyra's heart raced. She wanted to run, but where? The streets were alive, shifting, breathing. The walls melted into flesh. The air reeked of wine and blood and roses. Faces emerged from the concrete, smiling mouths without eyes, singing praises in 1,000 tones. And in every voice, one name repeated. Slaanesh. The name was a wound that begged to be touched. It filled every corner of the hive, every trembling soul, every corrupted prayer. Lyra fell to her knees, shaking. A hand brushed her face, soft, elegant, wrong. She looked up. It was neither man nor woman, neither beauty nor horror, yet somehow both. Skin like pearl and shadow. Eyes like galaxies dying. Its smile, radiant, endless, hurt to behold. It whispered, "Do you see now? This is freedom. The freedom to feel." Lyra's tears burned her cheeks. She wanted to scream, but the sound became laughter. Around her, thousands joined, the laughter of the damned, of those who had tasted perfection and could never return. The being touched her lips. "Tonight, the first hymn begins. Tomorrow, there will be no pain you do not love." Then it vanished, leaving the city trembling, its people crying, laughing, writhing. The silence never returned. In the archives of the Imperium, no record of Varaxis remained. Only echoes, songs of pleasure that screamed across the void, faint and eternal. And in the warp, a god smiled. When morning came to Varaxis, the sun did not rise. It pulsed. A vast, trembling orb of colorless light throbbed over the skyline like a living heart, spilling illumination that hurt to see, too bright, too soft, too alive. Shadows quivered like they wanted to breathe. The Hive's colossal spires glistened as if varnished in blood and dew. Every surface shimmered, slick with warmth. Lyra awoke in her hab room to the sound of music, faint and trembling. Not from any vox, not from any mouth, but from within the walls themselves. The melody bled through the air, the same whisper that had caressed her soul the night before. Her fingers itched. She found herself tracing the pattern of her veins, marveling at the movement beneath her skin. Every beat of her heart felt like a kiss. Every breath carried the perfume of something divine and obscene. When she stepped outside, the streets no longer resembled streets. The concrete was warm and pliant underfoot, pulsing faintly. The walls breathed in rhythm with the unseen music. And the people, oh, the people, moved like dancers. Some walked with blissed expressions, eyes rolled back, skin glistening with sweat and color. Others painted the air with their own blood, fingers trembling as if each droplet were a masterpiece. A few stood motionless, locked in silent ecstasy, tears of joy carving lines through the grime. Lyra felt horror crawl up her spine, yet it was the sweetest sensation she had ever known. She passed a bakery where loaves of bread had grown mouths that whispered hymns. A man wept as he kissed one. The scent of cinnamon and decay mingled in the air, intoxicating. In the plaza ahead, a crowd had gathered around the shattered statue of the emperor. His stone face lay broken, and upon it, a woman danced. Her movements were slow and graceful, each motion carving invisible trails of light. Her body was covered in glimmering runes that pulsed with every step. The crowd swayed, gasping, moaning, clapping in rhythm. When the dancer's foot touched the ground, it left a burn. When she smiled, men fell to their knees, sobbing from pleasure. Lyra couldn't look away. From the rooftops above, creatures began to descend. They had the shape of angels, yet their wings shimmered with oily colors, and their faces were too perfect, painfully beautiful, impossibly human. Their laughter was a chorus of madness. They did not speak, but their touch guided the crowd, soft hands turning screams into songs. A figure taller than the rest emerged from the radiance, wearing armor that shimmered like living silk. Its helmet split open like petals, revealing a face that shifted endlessly, now a man, now a woman, now something beyond both. Its voice was music. Children of sensation, the Dark Prince has heard your hunger. The crowd erupted into cries of joy. The feast begins. At its gesture, the air rippled. From the streets, the walls, the sky itself, shapes unfolded. Tables of flesh, chalices of blood, food that breathed and moaned. People fell upon it, devouring, drinking, weeping. Their bodies trembled, their eyes rolled white, their laughter turned to howls. Lyra wanted to run, but her legs carried her forward. She felt drawn to the figure, to its promise. Her veins pulsed in rhythm with its words. Every heartbeat begged for release, every nerve screamed for more. She saw her reflection in a pool of crimson water, her face was changing. Her eyes glowed faintly violet, her lips trembling with silent hymns. She whispered, "Please, make it stop," but the whisper came out as a sigh of pleasure. The figure turned its gaze upon her. "Why stop, little one? You've only begun to feel." A wave of warmth struck her, 1,000 invisible fingers brushing every inch of her mind. Memories flooded back, her mother's death, her hunger, her loneliness, every wound she'd ever carried, all twisted into exquisite beauty. Her pain was glorious. the being smiled. Now you understand why we sing. The crowd around her was dissolving, bodies merging into one another, skin melting like wax, forming writhing shapes that moaned in endless harmony. The Hive's towers groaned as they bent inward, reshaping into colossal statues of ecstasy and ruin. Lyra stumbled backward, clutching her head. No, this isn't real, this can't be. But the voice within her whispered, reality is only what you feel. She fell to her knees, sobbing. The music surged, the air vibrated, and the being's hand touched her forehead. Her scream was lost in the choir. When it ended, she lay silent, her body untouched, yet her soul burned clean away. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly pink. A smile, peaceful, empty, spread across her lips. From that moment, Lyra no longer existed. Only another voice in Slaanesh's song remained. And the feast continued, hour after hour, as the Hive sang itself into madness. Above, in the impossible sky, the Dark Prince watched and laughed, a sound of perfect joy that shattered the stars. The song never stopped. It swelled and shuddered through the Hive like blood through a vein. Every wall, every pipe, every breath joined the rhythm. The entire city had become an instrument, tuned to one terrible melody, the hymn of the Dark Prince. For 3 days the light had not dimmed, the pulsing sun above beat like a living organ, washing everything in violet warmth. No clocks worked, no time passed in any human way. Sleep no longer came. People either danced or lay trembling, caught between pain and rapture. But not all had surrendered. Beneath the ruin of Sector 9, in a maintenance tunnel that still smelled faintly of oil instead of perfume, a handful of survivors hid. Lyra was among them. Or what remained of her. She sat apart from the others, her back to the trembling wall. Her skin glowed faintly, tracing veins of pink light that pulsed in time with the music above. The others avoided her eyes, they had seen her whisper to shadows when she thought no one watched. Sergeant Corin, the last enforcer of Varax's Hive, paced before the group with a lost pistol clutched tight. His voice cracked as he spoke. "We move at shift change. If the generator still obeys my code, we can reach the upper ducts. Maybe outside." "Outside," a miner muttered. "There is no outside now. The sky sings to us." Corin snapped, "Then plug your ears and pray, before it finds you too." Lyra whispered, "It already has." The tunnel shuddered. Far above, the city moaned, metal bending, flesh growing, laughter echoing down the pipes. A sweet smell drifted in, like honey mixed with rot. One of the younger refugees began to weep, the tears were golden. Corin grabbed Lyra's shoulder. "You've been touched. You lead it here, don't you?" Her pupils dilated, twin mirrors of violet flame. "I hear it calling. It wants all of us. But I can still help you reach it." "Reach," he hissed. "We're running from it." Lyra smiled faintly. "There is no direction left. Only inward." The walls rippled. Pipes bulged like arteries. The song deepened, a bass note that vibrated in bone. From the far end of the tunnel came footsteps, slow and wet. Shapes emerged from the darkness, figures wrapped in tattered uniforms, their armor fused to skin, faces blissfully blank. They hummed the same note as the Hive. "Choir," Corin breathed. "Saint preserve us." The creatures advanced, humming louder. One reached out, its fingers split into tendrils that stroked the air lovingly. The survivors fired, lost bursts flared, lighting the corridor with searing red. The things didn't fall, they melted, reforming as the light struck them, laughter bubbling from their mouths. Run! They fled through side tunnels slick with something that pulsed beneath their boots. The air thickened until each breath was syrup. The music grew louder, forming words now, not in low Gothic but in pure sensation. Join. Sing. Feel. Lyra stumbled. Visions flashed, the feast, the dancer, the god's smile. Her body remembered the pleasure even as her mind screamed. She bit her lip until blood flowed, desperate to taste pain that was still her own. They reached an old freight lift, rusted but intact. Corin slammed the panel. The machine groaned, then shuddered upward. As it climbed, they saw the hive's inner layers, corridors transformed into throats, lights beating like hearts, citizens fused into walls in rapture. The miner fell to his knees. Emperor, forgive us, we're inside it. The city's alive. Lyra felt the same truth bloom in her chest. Varaxis was no longer a place. It was a body, and Slaanesh its soul. The lift halted abruptly. Above them stretched an atrium once used for trade. Now it was a cathedral of flesh and crystal. Towers coiled like vertebrae, stained glass windows wept blood, and in the center stood an altar made from human forms, their faces frozen in eternal ecstasy. Atop it hovered a being draped in violet light, neither demon nor angel, its every motion graceful, obscene. It turned toward them, smiling with too many mouths. Welcome, pilgrims, it sang. The prince delights in your endurance. Corin raised his pistol. We are not yours. Oh, but you are, the voice replied tenderly. You breathed his song the moment you were born. Now sing it loud. The air erupted in color. Notes became shapes, ribbons of sound that wrapped around the survivors, cutting and caressing at once. Corin fired wildly, screaming defiance. Each bolt dissolved before reaching the creature. Lyra stepped forward, hands trembling. If we sing, will it stop? The creature's smile widened. It will never stop. But you will no longer care. Something inside her broke, the last brittle shard of self. She began to hum. Softly at first, then louder, her voice weaving into the melody until it was indistinguishable. Corin tried to pull her back, but the music seized him too. His scream twisted into harmony. One by one, the others joined, their flesh glowing, merging into the architecture. The atrium filled with sound so vast it seemed to shake the heavens. From the warp above, laughter answered. When the echo finally faded, only silence remained, the first true silence since the night of the whisper. And in that silence, a single voice spoke from nowhere and everywhere. The song of the flesh is sung. Now begins the dance of eternity. The silence that followed the song was worse than any scream. It hung over Varaxis like a thick fog, muffling even thought. The hive no longer groaned or pulsed, it breathed slow, steady, content. From orbit, the city looked like a flower blooming from the corpse of a world, its towers curved outward, petal-like, glistening with iridescent light. But within, that beauty was horror sculpted in motion. Lyra awoke again, or something inside her did. She floated in a soft chamber that smelled of sweetness and iron. Flesh formed the walls, translucent and faintly glowing. Veins pulsed lazily with violet light, carrying rhythm instead of blood. She tried to move, her body obeyed halfway. The rest was no longer hers. She looked down and saw that her legs had merged into the floor, fine threads connecting her skin to the breathing surface. Her mouth formed words that didn't reach her ears, only soft hums escaped. Outside her chamber, the world writhed in impossible patterns. Streets had become rivers of muscle. Spires swayed like trees of bone. Everywhere, people had transformed into living sculptures, lovers locked in eternal embrace, dancers caught mid-motion, faces frozen in ecstatic terror. And above it all, the music returned, faint at first, then swelling again, now slower, darker, like a heartbeat echoing across eternity. Lyra heard other voices whispering near her. Not from throats, but from the walls themselves. Fragments of thought drifted through the flesh, remnants of minds once human. Don't let it take the dream away. We are the city now. It hurt so beautifully. She pressed her hand to the wall and felt them, hundreds, thousands of souls murmuring beneath the surface, their memories bleeding together. She caught glimpses, a child laughing as their shadow kissed them, a soldier laying down his weapon, smiling as his armor melted into silk, a priest kissing the ground until his tongue turned to glass. The garden of agony had bloomed. Lyra's chamber opened like a wound. Light poured in, a radiant violet that shimmered with motion. Something moved toward her, graceful as smoke. It was the same figure from before, the one who had led the feast. Its face shifted as it approached, smiling with tenderness that chilled the soul. "My faithful," it whispered, "you have become the seed of beauty. Do you see how your city blossoms?" Lyra tried to speak. Her voice came out as a shiver. "Please, let me remember who I am." The being touched her cheek with fingers that felt like both silk and flame. "Names are the cage of the dull. You are feeling now, pure and endless." She shuddered. Every nerve screamed and sang at once. Pleasure and pain spiraled together until meaning dissolved. Her tears turned luminous, evaporating before they could fall. The being gestured outward. "Come. Walk your garden." Her legs unbound from the floor, and she stumbled into the open. The ground beneath her feet pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Petals of flesh unfolded under each step. The air shimmered, filled with soft laughter. Everywhere she turned, new forms emerged, pillars made of intertwined bodies, fountains of glowing ichor, flowers blooming from human mouths that whispered hymns. The city had become an organism devoted to sensation alone. Lyra passed a mirror made of crystallized blood and caught her reflection. Her skin had turned pale gold, her eyes burning violet. A halo of soft light surrounded her, she looked divine and dead all at once. She fell to her knees, sobbing, her voice echoing strangely. "Is this heaven or hell?" The air replied in 1,000 whispers. "Both. Always both." Above, the false sun dimmed, then brightened, pulsing faster. The entire hive began to hum again, as if anticipating some new climax. The being spread its arms wide, its body dissolving into radiance. "The prince awakens. The garden must sing again." Lyra screamed as sound filled her, not entering her ears, but blooming from within her chest. Her body became a vessel for music, every breath a note, every heartbeat a drum. Around her, the garden trembled and swayed, alive with voices of joy and torment. From the warp beyond, something vast stirred, a presence too immense to name, too hungry to comprehend. It reached through the veil, touching its creation lovingly. The city screamed as one. And in that scream, Lyra's last human thought flickered like a candle, a memory of a quiet night before the whisper, when the air was still and her hands smelled only of cloth and thread. It vanished in the next heartbeat. When the music ceased again, the garden glowed with serene beauty. Every surface breathed peace. The Dark Prince smiled unseen, satisfied. Varaxis had become his masterpiece, a paradise carved from the soul of agony itself. In the heart of the blooming hive, where towers pulsed like the organs of a god, something fragile still stirred beneath the tide of ecstasy, a single ember of thought that refused to die. It was Lyra. Or what was left of her. Her body had become part of the living cathedral. From afar, she looked like an angel carved from pearl, her arms outstretched, her hair flowing like golden threads that fused with the walls around her. Her eyes glowed faintly violet, fixed upward in eternal awe. Yet inside, her consciousness flickered, a prisoner screaming behind a mask of rapture. She tried to remember her name. It was there, buried beneath waves of sensation and song, but every time she reached for it, the pleasure struck like lightning, blinding, paralyzing, beautiful. Sometimes she heard echoes of herself. Lyra. Lyra, remember the rain. But the voice was distant, weak. The city above her roared with life. The feast of sensation had ended, and in its place came the work of transformation. The garden expanded, swallowing what little machinery remained, turning gears into tendons, conduits into veins. The air shimmered with colors unnamed, and music poured from every surface. Among the countless forms fused into the architecture, some still thought, faintly, pitifully. Their whispers flowed together like a subterranean current of sorrow. Please, stop the light. I want to forget. I love it, I hate it, I love it. The Dark Prince heard them all and laughed in silent delight. Deep within Lyra's mind, something unexpected flickered, a voice not born of the warp, but of memory. Focus. She saw a face. Sergeant Corrin. Broken, bloodied, shouting over the hum of the hive. His last words before the song consumed him, "Fight it, remember who you are." That memory became her anchor. She clung to it, digging her mind into the echo like a hook. For a brief heartbeat, she felt herself separate from the chorus. The song faded. The air grew cold. The pleasure stopped. And for the first time since the night of the whisper, Lyra felt pain. Pure, human pain. It hurt more than anything she could imagine, because it was real. She gasped, a sound that startled even the living walls. Her chest rose and fell, her breath trembling, her heart hammering to its own rhythm rather than the hive's. Somewhere above, the entity of violet light stirred. The being that had guided her through the transformation appeared once more, a vision of impossible grace, skin rippling with colors that didn't exist. Its smile was the curve of a blade. "You resist," it said softly. "How exquisite." Lyra's voice cracked. "Why me?" "Because you still feel. That is the truest offering of all." The being's hand reached for her, brushing the air. The contact sent ripples of warmth through the entire structure, screams of pleasure echoing as the hive responded to her pain. Lyra clenched her teeth, forcing the agony to stay as agony. "I remember the sun. The real one." The being tilted its head, amused. "Memory is a wound. Let it close." "No," her voice shook, but it was her own. "You don't own me." The laughter that followed was not sound but sensation, the feeling of silk cutting through skin. Ownership is an illusion. You begged for release, and he gave it to you. Freedom from fear, from sorrow, from yourself. Lyra screamed, "Then why does it hurt?" The being smiled wider. "Because you are still beautiful." The ground split open around her, revealing tendrils of light reaching upward. They wrapped around her body gently, almost lovingly, and began to pull her back into the cathedral wall. She fought, straining against the pull. Her skin tore like paper, light spilling from every wound, yet she refused to yield. Each second of resistance sent ripples of pain through the hive, a dissonance in the symphony. The other voices in the walls began to stir. It hurts. She fights. It's wrong, the song is breaking. Lyra screamed one last word, her own name. The sound cracked through the hive like thunder. For a single, fleeting instant, everything stopped. The music halted, the walls froze, the false sun flickered. The city trembled as if confused. Far above, in the warp-touched sky, the Dark Prince turned his gaze toward Varaxis, curious, amused. Lyra collapsed, free from the wall, her body broken but her mind clear. She lay among the living streets, surrounded by statues of rapture. The air was still, the silence deafening. In the distance, she saw movement, figures in armor, marked with the sigil of the Aquila. The Imperium had come. Dropships pierced the atmosphere, their hulls melting as they entered the corrupted air. Some vanished before reaching the ground, consumed by light. But a few broke through. She heard the thunder of landing thrusters and the crack of bolter fire. Lyra crawled toward the sound, dragging herself through the pulsating ground. Every touch burned, every breath tasted like blood and perfume. The city itself tried to reclaim her, tendrils snaring her ankles, whispering promises of comfort. She tore herself free, leaving trails of glowing ichor behind. At the end of a ruined street stood an Imperial soldier, helmet cracked, flamethrower in hand. He turned as she approached, weapon raised. His voice was muffled, trembling. "Stay back. Are you human?" Lyra fell to her knees. "Help me." Before he could answer, the ground beneath him opened like a mouth. Tendrils lashed upward, wrapping around his legs, dragging him screaming into the depths. His flamethrower clattered to the ground, hissing. Lyra grabbed it, tears streaming down her glowing face. "Emperor, forgive me." She turned the nozzle toward herself. But before she could pull the trigger, the voice returned, gentle, tender, infinite. "There is no forgiveness here, my beautiful one. Only the next note." The flamethrower sputtered. The weapon melted in her hands, reshaping into a golden serpent that coiled lovingly around her arms. She screamed, and the serpent whispered, "Hush now. The song continues." Lyra's body dissolved into light. The last piece of her sanity slipped away, but in the final heartbeat, she smiled. Not from pleasure, not from corruption, but from defiance. The smile of a soul that refused to be forgotten. When the Imperial fleet finally glassed Varaxis from orbit, the last transmission received was not a cry for help but a melody, faint, haunting, human. It was Lyra's voice, whispering through static. "I remember the sun." And then, nothing but silence. The sky above Varaxis burned. From orbit, the planet looked almost peaceful, a sphere of radiant violet slowly collapsing into ash. The bombardment had lasted 6 hours, turning the Hive cities into molten seas. Every living thing below should have been annihilated. Aboard the command ship St. Venerus, Admiral Corvin watched the flames through a cracked viewport. His eyes were sunken, his lips trembling with exhaustion. He whispered the Emperor's name, not in prayer, but apology. "Status," he rasped. "Surface sterilization complete," replied the Vox officer. Radiation levels at termination threshold. No remaining biosigns detected. Corvin exhaled, yet there was no relief, only a hollow ache, like a wound that refused to close. He turned from the window. The command deck was silent. Crew members stared at their consoles as if afraid to look up. The air was thick, humming faintly, though none could tell why. Then the humming grew louder. At first, it was static bleeding through the vox channels. Then, music. Soft, distant, impossibly human. A woman's voice. Corvin froze. Mute all channels. But the sound persisted, slipping through sealed systems, resonating in the steel walls themselves. I remember the sun. The crew shuddered. One of the officers began to cry, pressing his hands to his ears. Another smiled strangely, whispering, "Beautiful," before his head struck the console with a dull thud, blood spreading across the controls. Corvin drew his bolt pistol. Purge that frequency. Tech priests chanted binaric prayers, scrambling to sever the signal. Yet the voice only grew clearer, a melody laced with whispers, echoing through every deck, every corridor. It wasn't just sound. It was feeling. Those who heard it too long began to tremble with conflicting emotions, joy tangled with terror, love fused with guilt. They clutched their chests, gasping as if drowning in sweetness. Corvin felt it too, the pull beneath his sternum, the heat crawling across his skin. He tried to remember the faces of the billions he had just condemned, but the music blurred them, replacing their screams with laughter. He stumbled toward the comms terminal, slamming his hand on the emergency rune. "This is Admiral Corvin to all vessels. Cut power to Vox and Auspex arrays immediately. I repeat, shut down all channels." Across the fleet, ships went dark one by one, their lights flickering out like candles in a storm. The song dimmed, but never stopped. Through the dead silence of space, it lingered, faint, delicate, like a heartbeat carried by the void. He loved the beauty of their suffering. Corvin gripped the edge of the console. "Emperor, save us." Behind him, the servo skull of a fallen officer began to twitch, its lenses glowing pink. It opened its metal jaw and sang the next line. The Admiral fired without hesitation, bolt round, direct hit. The skull exploded, scattering sparks. But when the smoke cleared, more voices joined the song. The ship's machine spirits were singing. The Saint Veneris itself hummed with joy. Corvin staggered backward. The metal under his boots pulsed, warm, almost alive. Veins of light spread across the deck, glowing like soft flesh. "Purge the core," he shouted. "Detonate if you must." The tech priests hesitated. Their mechanical voices trembled. "It does not wish to die, Lord Admiral." The lights dimmed to crimson. Every screen on the bridge displayed the same image, a single face, serene and radiant. A woman of impossible beauty, smiling. It was Lyra. Corvin fell to his knees, realization dawning in horror. No, she made it off-world. The voice filled the air, soft as silk, terrible as eternity. "Not off-world, dear Admiral. I simply learned to sing louder." The bridge shattered in light. Every mind aboard the Saint Veneris dissolved into rapture. Their last sensations were not pain or fear, but exquisite surrender, 1,000 hearts beating as one, until there was no distinction between flesh, steel, or soul. Hours later, the fleet vanished from Imperial records. The last transmission received by Terra was a soft, melodic whisper that lingered for days through the astropathic channels, a lullaby that drove several psychers to madness. It ended the same way it began. I remember the sun. The void is not silent. It never was. Long after the Saint Veneris and its fleet were erased from Imperial records, something still moved through the Imperium. It was faint, not light, not matter, but rhythm. A pulse that defied distance, like a heartbeat echoing through creation itself. Psychers across the segmentum began to wake screaming, clutching their heads, whispering the same name between convulsions. Lyra. In the warp, that name had become something else, a frequency, a shape made of desire and agony. The melody that once haunted a single hive world now spread outward, wrapping itself around dying stars and forgotten ships. Every echo of it carried a piece of Slaanesh's hunger, delicate, intoxicating, merciless. The Prince of Pleasure stirred in delight. Through the endless gardens of flesh and crystal within his domain, the song drifted like perfume. Demons paused their feasts to listen. Courtesans of agony swayed, their blades dripping beauty. The air shimmered with sensation too complex for mortal comprehension. And at the center of it all stood her. Lyra, or what remained of her, rose from a throne sculpted from the screams of a billion souls. Her body was no longer confined to form, it shimmered like liquid glass, shifting between angelic and monstrous. Her eyes held galaxies, and her voice carried the sweetness of memory and the despair of loss. She sang, and the warp bent around her. Each note she released became a strand of silk, weaving new realities, birthing new demons of exquisite sorrow. They took the shapes of those who had perished on Varaxis, familiar faces reborn as instruments of temptation and torment. They knelt before her. Mother of the song, they whispered. We have come to serve. Lyra smiled. Serve not me. Serve the one who loved your pain. Her words rippled across the domain. The very ground sighed. Slaanesh's laughter rolled like thunder made of velvet. The god's immense form unfolded from the horizon, both male and female, neither and both, a paradox of perfection. Well done, my beloved, purred the dark prince, voice echoing through every nerve of the warp. You have learned to make art of despair. Lyra bowed, trembling. I only gave them what they wanted, release from silence. Slaanesh extended a clawed hand the color of dawn. And what do you desire now, my creation? For a moment, something human flickered in her expression, a glimmer of the seamstress who once stitched dreams into cloth under candlelight. To forget, my lord. The god laughed softly. Forgetfulness is dull. Remember forever, that is beauty. He touched her face, and ecstasy shattered across reality. Every demon cried out in bliss. The song swelled until the warp itself vibrated with it. Stars flickered, their light twisting into violet hues. Somewhere in real space, a planet full of sleeping children began to dream of gardens made of flesh. The melody had crossed the veil. An Imperial frigate passing near the maelstrom detected it first, faint signals in the vox bands, like whispers through static. A choir of servitors went mad within minutes. The astropath burst into laughter before his skull exploded from within. By the time the captain ordered the vessel to retreat, it was already too late. The walls had begun to hum. Back in the warp, Lyra watched through invisible eyes as her voice touched another world. Her song had become self-sustaining, a contagion of emotion that fed upon curiosity, longing, fear. She looked to Slaanesh, and the god smiled. See how they listen, even when they know it kills them. That, child, is the essence of devotion. Lyra lowered her head. And when they all have listened, the prince's smile widened to impossible lengths. Then the galaxy will finally sing. The garden of her making expanded again, new souls blooming like flowers under her voice. Every note painted the void with color and suffering. The warp shimmered brighter than ever, alive with unbearable beauty. And somewhere, deep in that endless radiance, Lyra began to weep. Not from sorrow, there was no sorrow left, but from the eternity of sensation. Her tears turned into stars that pulsed with her song, marking every system soon to fall under her melody. Thus began the era whispered about only by madmen and heretics. The song that devoured the stars. In the chronicles of the Inquisition, there would be no name for it, only scattered notes of harmonic corruption, warnings to avoid the sound that promised both salvation and ruin. But in the endless darkness beyond human comprehension, one truth remained. Varaxis had burned. The fleet had perished. Yet the song endured. And in every shadow of every dying world, if one listened closely enough, they could still hear her voice, soft, tender, and utterly damning. I remember the sun. Inquisitor Cale Veritas had stared into 1,000 kinds of madness, but never silence like this. The St. Veneris incident had been purged from the Imperial archives, the name Varaxis erased from every star chart. Yet the echo of its sin remained. Ships that passed near the dead system returned empty or did not return at all. Vox operators spoke of hearing singing through static before they vanished. Veritas stood alone in his sanctum aboard the Obsidian Thorn, reading forbidden transcripts on a dim hollow slab. The words were fragmented, corrupted, as if the machine spirit itself recoiled from remembering. Auditory contagion, self-replicating mimetic resonance, converts sensation into worship. He looked away. His hand trembled, but he forced it still. He had seen cults, warp manifestations, demon hosts, but this. A song that devoured faith itself. That was new. The door hissed open. Interrogator Dara entered, pale and sleepless. My lord, the latest reports from the Maelstrom Fringe, they say the song is spreading. Whole planets quarantined. Even Mechanicu's outposts have gone dark. Veritas didn't answer. His eyes lingered on a picked recording recovered from one of the lost ships. It showed a woman standing in a room of glass. Her hair drifted like smoke, her eyes burned violet. She was smiling, not in cruelty, but with unbearable sorrow. And when the recording played, even through layers of null-warded filters, a faint hum seeped into the air. Dara flinched. Mute it. Veritas did, but the sound did not stop. It resonated in their bones. He turned to her slowly. You hear it too? She nodded, trembling. It feels familiar. Like something I dreamed. He closed the file and locked it under 5 layers of psychic wards. Prepare the silence vault. We travel to the source. The Obsidian Thorn descended into the ruined orbit of Varaxis weeks later. What had once been a hive world was now a sphere of obsidian ash. No life. No signal. No light except the faint shimmer of auroras dancing across its dead sky. Veritas and Dara stood within the observation dome, both clad in sanctified void armor. Around them, the stars pulsed faintly, as though the void itself was breathing. Do you feel that? Dara whispered. Yes, Veritas said softly. The silence is wrong. He opened his mind slightly, letting a sliver of psychic sense bleed outward. Immediately he recoiled, overwhelmed by the ghost of sound. Not a scream, not a word, a note. long, soft, and perfect. The note carried images, a woman's face, a city of flesh, billions singing as they burned. He staggered, blood running from his nose. Dara caught him. "My lord." He raised a shaking hand. "It's her. She's still here. But the world is dead." "No," he whispered. "It's dreaming." They descended to the surface. The ground was black glass, smooth and warm underfoot. The air shimmered faintly, though there was no wind. As they walked through what had once been the Hive's central spire, Veritas felt movement beneath the surface, shapes pressing up from below like trapped souls. At the city's heart, they found it, a single statue standing amidst the ash. A woman, carved perfectly in translucent crystal, her hands raised as if conducting unseen music. Her eyes glowed faintly violet. Lyra. Dara stepped closer, spellbound. "She's beautiful." Veritas drew his bolt pistol and fired. The statue cracked, and sang. A single note, impossibly pure, rippled through the air. The ground trembled. From every fracture in the stone, whispers rose, thousands of voices murmuring in unison. "I remember the sun." Dara screamed as the air around her vibrated. Her visor shattered from within. She clutched her head, blood streaming from her ears. "It's in me. It's inside my mind." Veritas dragged her back toward the shuttle, chanting liturgies of banishment, each word cracking with static. The sound followed them, tender and relentless. Inside the craft, Dara wept softly. She wasn't evil, Kale, she just wanted to be heard. He stared at her, grief and fury colliding in his chest. That's how it begins. Compassion is the first chain Slaanesh wraps around the soul. He sealed the chamber, flooded it with null fields, and burned the surface behind them. Again. But as the planet cracked under orbital fire once more, Veritas knew it would not end. The song had already reached beyond the stars. He could still hear it faintly through the ship's hull, not through sound, but memory. It whispered to him in the voice of someone who had died long ago. "Do you still remember the sun?" He closed his eyes. For a moment, he did. Then he wept, quietly, hopelessly, the lament of a man who knew that faith alone could not silence the beauty of damnation. The silence after the firestorm was worse than the singing. The world once called Varaxis had been burned again, this time to its core, yet still it refused to die. From orbit, its blackened surface looked calm, the perfect grave. But in the endless night surrounding it, the song lingered. Subtle. Patient. Waiting. Aboard the Obsidian Thorn, Inquisitor Kale Veritas sat alone in his sanctum. His armor lay discarded beside him, its purity seals torn away like forgotten promises. Before him, the Vox screen glowed faintly, replaying fragments of corrupted transmissions, the same haunting melody, fractured and ghostly. He whispered the words like a confession. "I have burned a world twice, and still it sings." Across the chamber, Dara slept under null-field sedation. Her dreams had become dangerous, her heart beat to the rhythm of Lyra's eternal song. Each time she spoke in her sleep, the air itself vibrated. Veritas stared at her, the last remnant of his faith made flesh, and wondered whether mercy still had meaning. The Inquisitor's log entries grew shorter each day. His handwriting, once precise as scripture, now trembled between sentences. Day 41, the resonance persists even within the Geller fields. The song adapts. It moves through thought. Day 43, I hear her in the hum of the ship. She calls my name now. Guilt or temptation, I no longer know which is which. Day 45, Dara's pulse synchronizes with the frequency. I have sealed her in stasis. I tell myself it is compassion. I lie well. The walls of the sanctum began to change. He didn't notice at first, just a shimmer, a ripple, like metal breathing. Then came the faint warmth beneath his fingertips, the soft pulse through the floor. The obsidian thorn was no longer inert. Machine spirits wept through the vox arrays. The hymnals stored in the archives rearranged themselves, forming a single new canticle, a harmonic variant of the forbidden melody. Veritas ordered exorcism rites. The servitors obeyed, until one by one they began to hum. He destroyed them all. But every shot echoed like applause. Weeks later, when the silence finally came, he thought he had won. The last echoes had faded, and the ship floated dead and cold above the ruin of Varaxis. No sound. No whisper. He sat there for hours, breathing in the quiet. Then came the voice. Soft. Feminine. Familiar. Kale. He froze. Kale, why do you still fight me? He turned slowly. Dara stood in the doorway of the sanctum, her eyes glowing faintly violet beneath the dim light. You should be asleep, he said, his voice breaking. I was, she whispered, stepping closer. But she woke me. She wanted to thank you. Veritas rose, his hand reaching for the bolt pistol on the desk, but his arm refused to move. The air had grown thick, heavy, scented faintly with roses and blood. Dara smiled gently. You did what no one else dared, you listened. She's inside you, he hissed. You're not alive, she asked. Maybe not. But neither are you. The light flickered. For a heartbeat, Dara's skin turned translucent, and beneath it, shapes writhed like veins of living glass. From her throat came two voices at once, hers and Lyra's, weaving together in perfect harmony. We remember the sun. Veritas fell to his knees. Why me? Lyra's presence filled the room, unseen yet overwhelming, like warmth blooming under the skin, like grief disguised as bliss. Because you grieve, Kale, she said softly. Because you understand. Every song needs a witness. He shook his head violently. I am no worshipper of your god. Lyra's voice deepened, her tone both tender and cruel. Then be my confessor. The chamber walls began to melt into color, violet, gold, crimson, folding like silk. The sanctum dissolved into the endless garden of Varaxis reborn, stretching outward in impossible beauty. Dara stood before him transformed, her body a vessel of light and agony. Lyra's face formed from hers, shimmering with both sorrow and ecstasy. Do you see now, Kale? She whispered. The Emperor offers silence. We offer eternity. He clenched his jaw, whispering the litany of absolution through tears. If the price of eternity is surrender, then I choose damnation. Lyra tilted her head, smiling as if proud. Then you already belong to us. The walls shuddered, a scream buried inside the silence. The obsidian thorn trembled as energy flared from its reactor. Kale reached for his rosette, activating the ship's self-destruct. If this song cannot be silenced, he said, then it will end with me. Lyra's expression softened. You cannot destroy a melody once it's heard. Perhaps not, he replied, but I can stop it from spreading. He tore open the psychic seals within his mind, the last weapon of an Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor. A blast of thought surged outward, pure will, raw agony, and burning faith. The shockwave collided with the song like oil meeting fire. The ship screamed. Metal twisted. Flesh blossomed from steel. The warp folded inward, devouring itself in waves of violet flame. Through it all, Lyra's voice sang louder, desperate, pleading, not for mercy, but for recognition. Kale, don't you see? You are part of it now. He pressed the final rune, whispering one last prayer. For silence. The obsidian thorn vanished in a starburst of light. For a time, there was peace. The song stopped. The void was still. But as the ashes of the ship drifted into the warp, a faint hum lingered, a heartbeat in the silence. And somewhere beyond mortal reach, Lyra opened her eyes once more, smiling faintly through tears of glass. Even silence, she whispered, can scream beautifully. The stars pulsed once. Twice. Then faded back into endless night. And the galaxy kept on turning, unaware that a new verse of the song had already begun. In the cold archives of the Ordo Hereticus, there is no mention of Varaxis, nor of Inquisitor Kale Veritas. The records list only a containment anomaly and an unsanctioned psychic detonation within the Maelstrom sector. The file is sealed, its sigils burned black. Yet sometimes, when the archivists work too late, they swear they hear something faint beneath the humming lights, a soft, wordless tune that makes their hearts ache without knowing why. No one speaks of it. No one dares. In a forgotten data vault, a single piece of corrupted audio remains from the obsidian thorn. It lasts only 7 seconds. The voice within is faint, distant, a woman singing through static. I remember the sun. Then silence. The Mechanicus have tried to erase it, but the file always returns. It hides within other systems, a hum in engines, a whisper in the vox, a pulse in the heart of the machine. And far beyond the stars, within the shimmering void between reality and desire, Lyra hums softly to herself, her melody cradling the void in gentle ruin. Her eyes open to a dawn that never warms, her lips curving in a smile both tender and eternal. The galaxy sleeps, dreaming of beauty. And the silence, at last, begins to sing.